Hey everybody, this is Jeff Peterson, and this is the Fueling the Tank podcast. And with me today, I have a great guest, somebody from down under, if you will. I got to know him years ago, and honestly, we've never met in person, but I've gotten to know him through social media and then becoming friends, and he's spoken for my nonprofit. But now I want to get him on my podcast, find out a little bit about his story, and see what he's all about and see what he's up to. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Tyson Franklin to the podcast. He is a podiatrist, kind of entrepreneur. He's got some podcast stuff. Let's bring him here and start talking and finding out about Tyson. Tyson Franklin, welcome, buddy.
Jeff, it is so good to be on here with you. And I love energy at the beginning of a podcast. Because you get some podcasts where they go, "Hi, I'm Jeff." And you go, "Oh my God, Jeff, you're putting me to sleep." But that was good. I love the energy. So Fueling the Tank is really good. That's how it should be.
Got to bring the noise. Now, so I don't want to jump right into the podiatry thing, but
oh no, let's not do that.
When you talk about bringing the energy as a podiatrist, because I know you personally, I know your energy, I know you go out and do a lot of passionate keynote speaking and everything like that. Podiatry isn't necessarily what I would say, "Oh man, this dude is waking up and he's fired up and he's gonna go look at a foot." Where did you get your inspiration and your drive to be into it, and was podiatry energizing to you? Or was it just what you found as far as helping people?
It's sort of what I found. I was actually going to be an art teacher. That was my number one goal. I was going to be an art teacher. And my brother, when he was doing dentistry at the time, I was in grade 12 in high school. He's going to be an art teacher. Pretty much it was a given that I was going to get in. And my brother said, "So what are you doing when you finish school?" I said, "I'm going to be an art teacher." He goes, "No. Why?" I'm going to be he goes, he said, "Why?" And I said, "Because I'm good at it and I really enjoy it."
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, I'm going to be a really wealthy dentist one day and you're going to be a poor art teacher. You're going to be coming up to me, hitting me up for money to buy paint and all that sort of stuff."
Yeah, he just didn't want to loan you money, I guess.
Yeah, he said, "Yeah, and eventually we'll stop talking." He said, "Yeah, we might as well stop talking now if you're going to go down that path." He said, "I'll have a Porsche, you'll have a Volkswagen." So I went and saw my art teacher and I said, "Out of curiosity, what sort of car do you drive?" She said, "Have a Volkswagen." "Why?" And I went, "Oh, shit." And she went, "What?" And I went, and I told her the story. And she said, "Look, you're really good at art." She said, "But you are pretty intelligent." She said, "You could probably do anything you want." She said, if you go down the art path, eventually art will become a job." She says, "And you may not enjoy it."
Interesting.
Said,
yeah.
Because I wanted to be an art teacher at a high school. And I said, "So you're telling me you don't enjoy my company each and every day?" She's going, "Not particularly sometimes, Tyson." "No."
Specifically, absolutely not, yeah. Tyson.
So I sat down with her brother and said, "Okay, if I'm going to be an art teacher, what am I going to do?" He said, "Do anything in healthcare."
I mean, good advice. Okay. If you're talking to somebody that has the intelligence level of the studying, that aspect of it, and a good student and that type of thing. I get it. I mean, the money is in healthcare and fields like that. It's just takes more schooling. You've got to be a certain type of person that can handle the schooling aspect of it to turn that into a career. But, it's, the art teacher side, do you ever go back and say, "Man, I kind of wish for some reason, I wish I would have been an art teacher"?
Oh, hell no. No, I still enjoy the creative side of life, which is doing the podcast.
Were you did you draw well, creative. Sketch, were you doodling? What made you think that you were good at art or you liked art? What were you as a person?
Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Yeah, what the hell were you doodling that you thought, that's a pretty good Mickey Mouse? What made you feel like you were a good enough artist to take it and then teach people art? What gave you that idea?
I was good at just creating stuff. So
there's a lot of stuff, Tyson. What did you create? Yeah, what did you create?
Pen, piece of paper, and just start drawing, and it would be very abstract. One of the things I really enjoy, I used to have this character called the Killer Grub, and it was halfway between a shark and a grub you'd find on a tree.
Okay.
So, and I just had this image in my head. Imagine if grubs on trees were like sharks, that if you went past one, or you're in the bush and you're pulling out some leaves, and next thing one latches onto you and takes off a thumb, that would totally change gardening. Gardening would become a really brutal sport. You go, I'm going gardening this weekend. People go, holy shit, I wouldn't do that.
Right.
I'm scared of killer grubs. So I used to draw this killer grub. He was like a character that I had. But so I always liked just doodling things. And
Sure.
then in art, we'd do paintings, and I could get through it to do a portrait of somebody. Be pretty crappy, but good enough.
So it didn't like, you weren't sitting there like freaking out like, I can't do this. You were like into trying to do art projects and the creative side of it, and you felt really comfortable with what you produced.
Yeah. So teacher would give you a bunch of wire and say, do something with it. So I would create a frog out of a whole pole of wire that you could bend.
Yeah, sure.
So what happened is I could see things in 3D really easily. So when my brother said to me, doing something in the medical field, I'm going, geez, what am I going to do? So my brother said, go back and repeat grade 12. So I had to go back to high school, repeat in final year. So I had to drop art and do physics. I had to drop manual arts and do biology. I had to drop physical education to do chemistry. I had to do
So you had all these courses that you hadn't taken, that in order to
I hadn't done any of them.
Yeah. Okay.
No, had never touched
Another
it.
great reason to be an artist, though, was you didn't have to take all those classes.
I know. So I went and saw the high school principal and said, I want to repeat. And he went, oh my God. He said, I thought we were getting rid of you this year. I said, I'm thinking I'll come back. He said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I need to do math, science. I do need to do 2 math subjects, biology, chemistry, physics. And he goes, okay, and you've done none of them before. I said, I know. He said, so you got to take everything from high school and you got to try and learn it, catch up, and then learn it all in 1 year to get in. And I went, pretty much that's what I've figured out I have to do. So I did. So I just went back, repeated. I was smarter than I thought.
Well, I think everybody, if you really kind of go back, in any portion of our life, if you want something, typically speaking, you can you have a different attitude about going through it. When you're just a high school student and you don't care, chemistry sucks and like it's really hard. But if you're doing it and there's a purpose behind it, it's just a different attitude that gets you through it and you pay more attention to it. So I think that's kind of like in life, as we all kind of go through things, it's the passions we pick up to get us to that next level and that next tier because we care about it. It's like, oh, I never would have done this in high school, but now all of a sudden I care about it because it affects my life. And, whether it's learning about, politics or taxes and all of these things that personally end up affecting you, then all of a sudden you start paying attention to it, and then all of a sudden you change the way you think about it and care about it, so you do it.
Yeah, and I think sometimes this you have different choices, different paths that you take. Yeah. I could have gone down the art path, and I still would have been really happy. My brother probably would have stopped talking to me.
Yep.
But I know I would have enjoyed it. But my brother and I, we were sitting down one day, and we said, I don't think it would have mattered whether I'd been a carpenter, a plumber, an art teacher. Wouldn't matter what I had done. It was probably in me that whatever I was going to do, I was always really competitive, and I always wanted to be the best. So if I was on a sporting field, I hated losing. I just dirty. If we lost the game, I would come off just fuming that we lost, especially if I had people around me who went, we gave it our best shot. And I'm going, no, I noticed that you didn't give it your best shot. You're a little lazy out there. So I was always competitive. So it wouldn't have mattered what I had done. Podiatry just happened to be the thing I fell into.
Right. And I suppose if you look at it that way, it's like if you would have gone the path of being an art teacher, there's probably the side hustle side of you that would have taken the passion for art and turned it into, something else, whether it was website development, marketing, with the creativity side of you, and turned it into something. If you weren't happy with the pay, you would have found other things to take that passion and what can I attach this to that has my skill sets and my passion that I can make more money and be the best at what I'm doing. And I think that's just you personally, because you went and you were a podiatrist, but you didn't stop there. You thought outside of podiatry and helping people and took it to a whole different level. So I do think you're right. I mean, no matter what you would have chosen, that competitive nature and that kind of inner drive would have taken it to some place that wasn't specific to just being an art teacher.
Yeah, and in hindsight, I probably would have been better as a graphic artist than an art teacher.
Sure.
So because when I was going through university, to get money to go to uni, I used to work on a chook farm for 3 months a year, and all that money I saved up killing chickens is what that I used to actually get me through the following year. But when I got to the chook farm, there was another guy who was a graphic artist. Okay. So each year we would meet back there for 3 months. We were pretty good friends. Each year he would bring out his portfolio of what he'd drawn, and you would see how well he'd progressed over the years. And what used to really annoy me is Tyson, they'd say, "Hey, Tyson, so, and what did you learn at university?" I learned more about feet. I was so annoyed that he kept whipping out his portfolio and saying, "Look at my portfolio." And I didn't have a portfolio.
Well, yeah, as a podiatrist, or you go to school to open up a book with a bunch of pictures of feet. I mean, that's not. Yeah, they're going to think that you've got a foot fetish, not going to school for podiatry. So I mean, you can't have a portfolio for that.
I know. And when I was watching him doing that, I was really envious and a little bit jealous.
Yeah.
I would see what he was doing. I could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that was probably the only time I got frustrated that I wish I had been a graphic artist and not a podiatrist. But how I got into podiatry itself was when I went back and repeated, a friend of mine that I went through school with for 12 years, he went off to uni. He happened to be at the high school the day I was filling in what I wanted to do. And I said, "Lyndon, what did you end up doing?" He said, "I did podiatry." And I went, "What's that?" He goes, "Oh, feet." And I went, "Bullshit. There's a course on feet. You can go to university and learn about feet. That's in the medical field. There's a group of people that look at feet." And he went, "Yeah." I went, "That seems really odd." He says, "Actually, you would be really, really good at it." And I said, "Why is that?"
Yeah,
he said, we make these things called orthotics that go into people's shoes. He said, they're made by hand. At the time, they were made by hand. Really hard to make. He said, but with your art background, he says, I reckon you would just nail these things. And he was spot on. That was the one thing I loved doing when I got to uni, was making them. I made them better than anybody else. And there was always this conversation between, is podiatry a science or is podiatry an art?
Sure. Yep.
So having that art background, like I did the student magazine while I was there, they didn't have one, so I created one.
See, that's totally you. I mean, that's you just being like, this is what I do, but there's always a passion about things that you do, and everything that you've created, whether it's social media posts, whether it's your video content, whether it's your walk that you did, which is kind of the way that we
that's how we met.
Ended up meeting, where you listened to a different podcast every single day for a year while you were doing a distance walk to get back into health or stay healthy, depending on the time you were doing it. But everything you do has this creativity, this Tyson spin on things. And it's kind of like what I was saying. It's like, man, everything that you do is somehow next level. Everything you do is next level. So your buddy gave you good advice. I mean, I'm glad you decided to go into podiatry, because from what you're doing now, helping other podiatrists with their business and the way that they think about it, look at it, you're teaching a lot of people how to look at the field itself differently, versus just I learned how to be one.
Podiatry has changed so from when I started it in 1988 was when I graduated, through to now. I look at what podiatry was when I started and I look at what podiatry is now. And I think there have been certain people that have influenced it a certain way. And I'd like to think some of the things that I did way back did change podiatry a little bit, just in how we approached marketing. So, I was the first podiatrist in Australia to ever advertise on TV. One, because it was against the rules to do it. And I found a loophole.
Again, something that I would expect from you.
So I found a loophole in the system, so I was able to do TV ads. And when the registration bill came down on me like a ton of bricks, as I was expecting, And I pointed out the loophole and went, oh, so you found a little loophole that you think you could get through. I said, no, I found a loophole I could drive a truck through.
Yep.
I said, you can't do anything. And then and then after that, other podiatrists started doing TV ads. So
why was that something that you weren't allowed? Why was that something that you weren't allowed to do? What were they trying to accomplish by not allowing you to advertise?
Yeah. Well, they had really, really strict advertising rules, and I actually agreed with them. I really agreed with the advertising rules, and it was to stop two people graduating. Like, say you and I, so we both did podiatry together. We come through. You've got really rich parents with deep pockets, and I worked on a chook farm killing chickens. So we both graduate, and after a couple of years, you decide to set up your own practice. I've had to beg, borrow, and steal to get enough money to get my practice up and going.
Sure.
And I've got a certain budget that I've got to stretch to make sure. Now, we're both in the same town. You've got a parent with deep pockets. And they go, here you go, Jeff, we'll set up your $500,000 clinic, and here's another $500,000 to get out there and just own the town that you are the podiatrist. So that's what it was intended to stop happening, I think.
Gotcha. So, I mean, at that point, wouldn't it have been easier or more logical, if you're looking at it hindsight, to say that versus you can't market yourself, more you can't be within a certain radius of each other? Wouldn't that have just kind of solved the problem?
Yeah, but then that'd be restriction on trade. Like if you had someone, if you and I went to the same town, and that was your hometown,
and you can't only market within a 5-mile radius anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered. What the hell are you thinking, Peterson? Jeez. So I mean, I'm just looking.
You think it's like a franchise?
Yeah, I'm like, what the heck? So it's like when I start to think about rules that are like that, I'm just like, what was the thinking behind it? And I get it was to give everybody the same opportunity or chance.
I think that, yeah.
But let's put it this way. If you were just a better podiatrist and you got more clients, not through marketing, and you built up this amount of money on your own, they're still kind of handcuffing you a little bit from you being able to market that you exist, which is a little crazy, honestly. I'm not gonna lie.
I always found when you set up your own business, nothing beats, you get the best marketing plan in the world.
Sure.
And you can have really deep pockets.
Yep.
And if you and I had gone up against each other, I still would have won.
Yeah, right. If you suck and somebody else is better, no matter what, they're going to go find a different podiatrist.
Yeah, but even if we were equal skill level, equal in delivery and the service, I still would have won for two reasons. One, because I always wanted to be number one.
Yeah. Okay.
So I always,
That's fair.
But I was prepared to do the work. So when I arrived on the Gold Coast, that's where I had my first clinic. Gold Coast in Queensland. It took me about 6 months, but I went and visited every single doctor, physio, chiropractor. I'm actually went in the legwork, face-to-face meeting. When I set up in Cairns, tropical North Queensland, where Steve Irwin died, got to watch those stingrays.
That's right.
Just like a killer grub. That's what the killer grub could have done. And when we got crocodiles too, they're bastards. Someone got grabbed on the beach the other day. The guy's just fishing on the bank. One latched down, grabbed him by the leg and dragged him into the water, only because he had a knife in his back pocket that he actually stabbed the crocodile and got out. Anyway, different story altogether.
I mean, that's shit that's like real life. Like, I mean, I hear sometimes you hear about like a small dog getting nabbed in Florida, off a bank or something like that. But just like a croc just decides, oh, there's a leg on a person, I'm gonna go grab it because that's the meal I want. I mean, that's
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, all right, back.
So, when I came to
podiatry,
Cairns, when I came to Cairns, I did exactly the same thing. I went and visited every single doctor, every physio, every chiropractor. I wanted them to put a face to a name. So to me, nothing beats a really good work ethic. I don't care. Nothing beats that. Going out, I went to every networking event. And patients, when I sold my last business, some of the patients that I'd been seeing for almost 30 years were people I met the first couple of years I moved to Cairns that I'd met at networking events, and I knew how to work the room. I would go and see people, and I wouldn't just walk up and go, "Oh, hi, I'm a podiatrist," and hand them a business card. I would get to know them, like
that
them,
drives me crazy.
Talk with them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Some people don't know how to network. You can network and you can network professionally.
Right. Yeah, and it's, you go to these networking events and 90% of them drive me crazy because it's bankers, it's insurance people, it's like it's the same same business cards, same people are always at the same networking events, and it's like they go to it and they think by handing a business card to you and standing next to you and small talking with a drink in their hand that's networking, and it's always driven me crazy, and but you're right. I mean,
Now it's LinkedIn. LinkedIn does that.
LinkedIn does
You
that.
get someone that reaches out to you on LinkedIn and you go, oh, yeah. So, or it could be even Facebook. Somebody reaches out to you on Facebook and you'll go, oh, yeah, they know Jeff Peterson. There's a bit of a connection. And as soon as I say, oh, they're into social media marketing, and I'm like, oh, or they coach business coaches.
Right.
And I'm like, oh.
Right.
And not that I just know that as soon as I
they're
accept
good careers
this,
if they want to do it, but it's just like,
I do business coaching for podiatrists, so it's an honest way to make a living. However, when a podiatrist connects with me, I do not send him 5 or 6 messages just ramming my coaching business down their throat. I accept the thing, and then I might ask them a question about what they're doing, and I'll see their feed coming through. I'll comment. To me, it's exactly like going to a live networking event.
Yes, it's gotten that way, and I think it's. And you've gone through this, because if you were starting back in the late 80s, early 90s in business, social media wasn't a thing. There wasn't the social marketing wasn't a thing. So you've been through it where you did the door-to-door, hey, I'm Tyson, the networking events, that whole part of it. And then all of a sudden the social media starts coming into it. How much did you pivot into it, or kind of wrestle with it? Like, were you all in on, hey, I get social media. Hey, I'm a graphic person by, passion, and I'm going to go out there and do something with this. Like, what did that feel like to you in your business, in your industry? Was that a plus, a minus, or you avoided it at all costs?
Well, I do remember saying to someone, oh, Facebook, that'll never work. But I also said that about Madonna and Pink. So don't always take...
Right.
I remember seeing Madonna the first time and Pink the first time, one-hit wonders.
Right. Oh, yeah. That's one.
I was wrong.
Right after another hit wonders. Yeah.
100. I forgot the 100 hit wonders.
Right.
And so, when social media first came about, like Facebook, I'm thinking, it won't work.
Yep.
And the only reason I only ended up on Facebook accidentally when somebody applied for a job from overseas. I said, have you got your resume? And they said, oh, I put it on my Facebook profile. You can download it from there. I went, oh, shit, that means I have to go and join Facebook. So I joined Facebook purely for that reason.
Right.
Then not long, I think I forgot my password, all that. Huh. But then eventually I got a friend request from someone from high school, and I went, God, I haven't seen these guys for like 20 years.
Right.
So I connected. And so initially I only got into social media purely to catch up with old friends, high school buddies.
Same.
And then it sort of morphed into, meeting a couple of other people. But I probably didn't. Yeah, I reckon I was late to the party.
I was really late. I was really late to it. Even to the point where LinkedIn, okay, I had a career. I was upper level management as I was, growing in my career at different, jobs that I had. This is funny. I went all the way back recently to see on our Geneva Supply LinkedIn page how many followers we had and who was the first follower we ever had. And I start going back all the way through because we started in 2009. Yeah. But we didn't start our LinkedIn page until years later. And I didn't actually start LinkedIn, I think, until like 2014. Like,
about the same.
Yeah. And I was just like, I just never did it. And I'm like, I don't know what this, my whole thing was like, I'm not looking for a job. Why do I need LinkedIn? I don't want somebody seeing me out there and have them think I'm looking for a job. I don't want people to think I'm job hopping or all these things. So I was a late bloomer to it because I didn't understand the concept of what it was back then, which a lot of it was networking for job opportunities or trying to hire people or find people. So I got into it, but LinkedIn now is a whole different world. It is so much of a social networking platform that has a little bit more of a professional twist than a Facebook side of things. But
Oh, definitely.
I mean, the way that I grew into it and sounding like you grew into it was, I mean, it's so different our generation versus like what everybody's jumping into now. And I sit there and wonder what social media is going to be like 15 years from now, that is going to have to adapt and twist the way the younger generations have been always knowing social media was, because what it changed from when we started to what it is now, it's mind blowing. It's almost just overwhelming to try to navigate through.
Yeah, I think the businesses that are going to do really well in the future are ones that are going to use all the social media platforms, or they're going to use a couple of them and they're going to do it really well.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like say TikTok, for example. I've seen people use TikTok really well, and I've seen other people that are just there,
right,
waving their hands about and miming songs, and yep, they've got a million followers, and I'm like, good for you. You won't see me doing that.
Right.
But I can see it being used in more professional manner as more business people get involved. But I think the businesses are going to do well who are going to have a balance between social media, or all the social media platforms, and old school marketing. I really believe the amount of podiatrists that I'll do coaching with, and I will say to them, do you have a newsletter, for example? Or do you have, and sometimes, and you can still use old school paper newsletters, or you can still post a letter to people. And because nobody else is doing it, it really stands out. You can have face-to-face meetings. There's a lot of old school things that I think are being neglected that are really valuable if you know how to use them right.
Jesse Cole, who I think you know, Jesse Cole, the Savannah Bananas.
Jesse's been on my podcast twice.
Oh, he's the deal. He's the real deal. I love him. And I got a handwritten thank you note from him just for when I first met him and all this kind of stuff. And it shows up in this yellow envelope on this yellow thank you card. And I flip it around, and it's a thank you note, just, saying thank you so much. It's been great to get to know you, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, that is like it because it was different. It meant something.
Yeah.
So I just did something here at the office and for a few people, and I walk into my office yesterday morning, and I walk in and there's an envelope there and it says Jeff on it. And I open it up and it's a thank you note, handwritten thank you note from one of the employees here at the company. And I was just like, versus just a walk by and say, hey, thanks for, doing that. That was a lot of fun. It was like that extra step of writing a thank you note.
Yeah.
It's old school, and it's endearing. It stands out, and it just kind of hits you a different way. And I think
bet you haven't thrown any of them out.
No, it's in the top drawer, my top desk drawer.
Top drawer of my office as well.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, I'll go back and for the few that I have, and I've got some from kids from the nonprofit visiting program I do, that I'll get handwritten thank you notes, and every once in a while you go back and read them. Now, you're not going to scroll through a whole bunch of texts to try to find when somebody said thank you for something, but you will go through a little stack of thank you notes because they're thank you notes, and it kind of brings you back to a connection or something you did with somebody or for somebody, and there's this appreciation. I think old school thank you notes, marketing, I think there is that balance, and I don't think enough companies, think about it or do it.
Some of the younger ones, especially newer podiatrists, they're just 100%. Everything they do is online. Digital. It's all the social media platforms. Yep. It's online bookings. It's email newsletters, which I love email newsletters. So I think they are awesome. But coming to old school stuff, like the thank you notes, I've got a drawer that I put them in. There's a couple that stand out. I've got one from you.
Yep.
That you may have forgotten that you sent, but I do have it.
I remember.
But I remember the one that really stands out. Remember, I know yours because yours was on a nice card and it had your logo and all that. I think it might be from the kids in the tank.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And so that's in my top drawer. I go through them all the time. I've done a podcast episode just on doing thank you notes. But one stood out to me when I was at a conference for 3 days and had a guy sitting next to me that I'd had known before. I had met him before. But this 3-day event, this is Business Black Ops over in Arizona.
Yeah.
That you're going to come to You
Yes.
should come to next year.
Yes,
I will
I
tell
will.
you about it later.
I promise.
And so anyway, about a month later, because Australia takes forever to get mail here, I opened up this card and it was a letter from him just saying, hey, thank you for giving me a copy of your book. I read it on the plane going back to Washington. He said, brilliant book. He said, and by the way, I just loved sitting. The energy you put out over that 3 days was just fantastic. And this was just this really nice note. And I showed it to my wife. She went, my God, how nice is that?
Yeah.
And that one really stood out because it was so unexpected. And I think if people did that more, just buy some thank you cards. There's a thing called a pen that you can actually write on. Yeah, it makes a funny noise like that when you write, but it's worthwhile.
I think so too. And it gets more and more difficult on how you can have yourself or your business stand out in the social media clutter. And if you're trying to market in it, it's expensive. I mean, and it could just be a simple gesture that somebody else isn't doing, and it's just genuine. You know, as long as it's from you and it's personal and it's authentic, I mean, that plays. If it's just a whole bunch of the same thank you notes that you wrote and you hand wrote them, but you said the same shit in every note. And, you know, this person said, oh, I got this thank you note from Tyson Franklin last week in the mail. And you're like, hey, I got one too. Oh, what'd yours say? It said, oh, thanks so much. You know, and all this stuff. And you're like, oh, mine said the same thing. So don't catch yourself thinking that a pen on paper is the difference. It's actually caring about what you're doing, what you're sending, and to who you're sending it to. And that's the important part of business.
Oh, definitely. There's got to be some meaning behind it.
It does. You know, it has to. So as you've kind of grown through your career, I only know this because we've talked about it before. You've had multiple companies that you've started and sold.
I have. I've had a lot.
So tell me about that process. You know, when you first got into business, were you ever in a partnership? Was it always you did everything solo? So what were some of those stories, journeys, and running a business and then selling it? What's that? What did that mean to you?
Okay, first business I had was on the Gold Coast. So I graduated. It was all qualified. I thought I'd go and work for somebody else for a couple of years, and I couldn't find a job that I liked. And the money to be employed as a podiatrist as a new graduate, the money's really bad. Well, back then it was really bad. And so I decided I worked out I was probably going to, by the time I paid insurance, do all the other stuff, I was making more money killing chickens.
Yeah.
So I decided, I kept doing that. I graduated, I kept killing chickens. And then I decided to set up my own business. So I used to work at the chook farm from 5 a.m. till 9. And then I would then go to my podiatry practice and work there. And it was funny. The money from the chook farm is what helped finance the podiatry clinic.
A lot of people, a lot of people will graduate or get into a career and think it is the career's responsibility to afford my bills. It is not my responsibility. I went to school for this. What I went to school for should be responsible for making sure I can make a living. And that's just not true. The fact that you were, I'm going to go kill chickens for 4 hours every morning because I know that my business isn't where it needs to be yet to pay my bills. And I've got to help get it there. And I'm going to put the extra time and effort into something completely different that is going to fund what I'm trying to accomplish. A lot of people just sit there and grind through and go to work and do their 9 to 5 and keep thinking that's the only way they're going to make more money is by getting better between 9 and 5. And I've been here a year and a half. Give me a raise. I've been here 3 years. I should be a manager. I've been here 5 years. I should have ownership of the company. There's this self entitlement side of human beings, and people say, "Oh, it's this generation. They're so self." No. When I was a kid, always been there. It's always been there. It's not new. This self entitlement.
I saw this really good photo of people. They talk about everyone's on their mobile phones. Nobody talks to each other on buses, trains anymore. I saw a photo from like the 40s, and
It's called a
every single
newspaper.
personal trainer. Newspaper.
Yeah, right.
I'm thinking nothing's changed.
Nothing has changed. We just have different devices, different reasons, different what we called it. The term self-entitlement wasn't invented in 2019. Self-entitlement was from a long, like, it's, people just can't get out of their own way sometimes when they think about, you know, what they're defining things in their own bubble. And I think it's important because what you're doing, I think it's a huge lesson to anybody that's out there doing it. And business owners, hey, if you know you've got employees that are doing a side hustle, support it, know about it, understand it, mentor people to help them with side hustles, because they're doing a side hustle for a reason. It's because they might not be making enough money at what you're paying them, and you might not be able to pay them more. So you've got somebody that's driven, help them with it. You know, it's like, if you can't pay them more for what their job is and what they're capable of doing at your company, support them and help them do it. I've got 4 people at my company that I know have passionate side hustles. I'm the biggest customer for one of the people that has a company called Badger Market, and she sells like candles and T-shirts and stuff from that are kind of Midwestern based in the U.S. and that style and fashion. I'm her biggest customer. I'm constantly looking. I see her site, and I buy a T-shirt. I buy, you know, these peanuts that she's got. I buy this candle that smells like an old fashioned. It's support the people that are supporting you and helping you get to where you are. I don't understand this battle of, oh, you've got a second job. This isn't going to work because you should be putting all those hours into my company. Give it up. Give it up. Let people,
as long as it's not, as long as they're not setting up a business that's going to be the opposite.
That's going to steal your business. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've got a side hustle. I'm setting up a podiatry clinic on the side. Do you mind?
So you go into your first business, and it was your own. You went into your own.
It was my own, and I knew absolutely nothing. I really struggled. Like, I didn't lose money. I struggled with it for a couple of years, and then I got a problem with my hands. This dermatitis broke out of nowhere, and just totally destroyed my hands. I couldn't work anymore. So I was forced to sell that business. And then I took 2 years off, sat at home, watched videos, VHS back then.
Yeah.
Before DVDs.
Real videos.
And I'd watched nearly everything in the store. There was nothing left to watch, and I was bored. And I said, I'm going to go for a road trip. So my wife at the time, she's not my wife now, but my wife at the time, I have a better one now. Anyway,
that's awesome.
My wife at the time, she had a brother that lived in Cairns, and said, I want me to go for a drive. So my idea was to come for just a drive up to Cairns, have a bit of a look around, and drive back down again because I had the time. And I got up here and I liked it. And then while we were here, my hands started to feel a little bit better. And then because I had to go to the doctors on a regular basis.
Sure.
To then see the dermatologist. Anyway, I get a phone call at home one day, and it was a doctor that lived in this small little country town just out of Cairns. And they said, we hear you're a podiatrist. And I went, yeah. And they said, I don't suppose you would be able to come down and do a visit at our surgery down in this town. Yeah, I'll guarantee we'll have so many patients. And I went, oh, okay. My hands were feeling pretty good. I was off on insurance, and I was allowed to earn a little bit.
Sure.
So I went, okay, I'll come down. And I still had my instruments. I'd kept certain things from my business. So I went down there, did the work. Yeah, back in the day, made a couple $100. And I was like, well, that was easy. So they said, can you come down every month and do that? I went, yeah, okay, not a problem. And it just sort of grew from there, that all of a sudden I was out and about doing all these, like, visiting small little towns that nobody else was servicing.
So you got back to that networking. Really, the networking concept comes right back into it, getting to know people, and word of mouth, and, you know, doing a good job and having people, you know, get to know Tyson Franklin.
Well, that's what happened. It was one doctor told another one, and then next thing I'm visiting about 13 little small towns around Cairns, nothing in Cairns itself. And then when I was at the doctor in Cairns, I was telling him I was doing all this stuff. He said, well, I've got a spare room here you could use. I went, okay. So then I started working from a place in Cairns, and it just kept growing. And then it got to a certain point where my wife at the time said, I miss the rest of my family down in Brisbane. I said, I don't. And so I just knew which buttons to push. I helped the pack.
Yeah, for sure.
And it just was, what it was is you meet someone when you're younger, because we met when I was like 18, and you're very similar at certain times when you're
you haven't started living a different life and a career and bills and responsibility.
As we grew, we were just different. I had different goals. She had no goals. And we were just sort of going down a different path. And I was like, I could keep dragging this out.
Right.
Or we just has to come to an end. So that's what we ended up doing. So I stayed in Cairns, and she went to Brisbane and got remarried a couple of times.
Yeah, I mean, different times in different times of your life, different things, different goals, right?
Yeah, I won't go down that path any further. It's ugly. And so anyway, so Cairns just kept growing. So yeah, eventually Cairns became like a really good business. But what was interesting, when I opened up my first proper clinic in Cairns, the difference between the Gold Coast, I had no idea what I was doing. When I opened up in Cairns, the advantage was there was only 2 podiatrists up here.
Okay.
So straight away, it wasn't hard to be noticed, but you still had to put in the legwork. You had to do the networking, you had to go face-to-face and meeting people.
The footwork, if you will.
And what was that?
The footwork, if you will.
You had to do the footwork. Yeah, so things just kept growing. Things went really well. Business was booming, and eventually, then I learned. I went to a seminar. I went to a weekend workshop. Learned about systems and just there was this one event that I went to, and the person said, write down what you made this year. So I wrote down what I made. Now, what's your goal for next year? So I wrote my goal for next year. And he said, okay. Now, that goal that you wrote down for money next year, he said, add an extra 0 onto it. That's your new goal. So what he said to us was, write what you made this year, write what you want to make next year, write a list of all the things that you think you need to do to actually achieve that goal.
Okay.
So I wrote them all down. He said, now put an extra 0 on it. That's your new goal. And the whole room went, oh, you've got to be kidding, bullshit. Everyone grumbled.
I paid $149 to come to this damn conference.
Yeah, $249 I think it was at the time. This is bullshit. And so he said, hang on. He said, so you're telling me if somebody, he said, well, what are some extra things that you can do? And everyone's going, oh, everyone's still grumbling. He said, so you're telling me if somebody had everyone that you loved in one room and had guns held on them, and said, if you do not achieve this new goal, we will kill everybody. You're all going to say you're just going to grumble and bitch about it and not worry about it. Or do you think you could come up with some new ideas?
Yep.
And I went, oh. So bang, started right. And everybody in the room was doing the same thing. Now, that following year, did I hit the goal with the extra 0? No, but I did double what my original goal was. And it was that one event that I just went, wow, it totally just changed my mind. And what's really interesting, the guy who ran the event was a guy by the name of Brad Sugars. I don't know if you've heard of Brad Sugars at all.
No.
He was an Australian guy. He now lives in Las Vegas. And what was funny, going ahead from like 20 years after that, I had him on my podcast, which was really cool.
That is cool.
That I reached out to him and I talked about that weekend event that I was at. I was at this weekend event. I've got the notes from that weekend event sitting on my bookshelf just above me here, and I refer to it all the time because whenever I refer back to my notes, it just brings this emotion and this creative energy. But that's what really opened my mind to thinking, well, I can do whatever I want. So my business went from where it was to doubled, tripled in a very quick period of time. Once we got to a point, I went, wow, is my business really good because I'm a good podiatrist, or is my business really good because I have great systems and I've set up a good business? So I said, let's test the theory. So I set up another clinic 800 kilometers away, about 500 miles.
Yep.
I wanted it to be far enough away that my reputation
your clients weren't
influence.
going to go. Right. Yep.
No influence whatsoever. So I went down there with a certain budget, small clinic, set it up. And in the first 12 months, what took me about 8 years to do in Cairns, I did in 12 months in Mackay.
So it was your capability, it was your skill sets, it was your capabilities, it was your drive to be a great podiatrist, but it was also a big factor of the systems and the processes of the business that got you there.
Yeah, and I thought, wow, well, if I can do it for me, that worked. And then we won they had this major business award in Australia called the Telstra Business Awards. The Australian government and Telstra Business Awards, and I won it. We
Wow.
entered, and we got interviewed, and I told them what I was doing, and we ended up winning for this category of 5 to 20 employees. And that totally just opened up all these doors to different things I could go to, meeting different people. Some of the people I met on that night, I'm still friends with now. And so I thought, well, if I can do that, how many times could I do this?
Right.
So I started thinking, maybe no one ever franchised a podiatry clinic before. I'm going to try it. So I thought, if I can do it, can I teach somebody else to do it? So there was a podiatrist that was working for me, and I said, hey, do you want to set up a podiatry clinic? I'm going to do this franchise. I went, okay. So I helped them set one up, which is about 400 kilometers away, which is 250 miles.
Yeah.
Or 300 miles away. And I helped them set that up, and it boomed. And I went, I'm onto something here.
Yeah.
So, and I kept getting people come up to me, and then people kept coming up to me at conferences, knowing I won the Telstra Award, saying, oh, how do you do this? How do you do that? And I said, and someone said, wish you'd just write a book. I went, okay. And that's how the book, It's No Secret There's Money in Podiatry, came about, was because I got sick of telling people things all the time. So I thought, I'll write a book, and that'll help them.
And then you can hand them a book.
Then I hand them a book. Then
right.
I wrote the second book, It's No Secret There's Money in Small Business, because the podiatry book was really good, but no one would pick it up unless they were a podiatrist.
True.
So I decided to rewrite the book, and it's about 30% different to the original book. It's No Secret There's Money in Small Business. And
because
as I always
the
say,
podiatry book wasn't the podiatry book. No Secret There's Business Podiatry. It wasn't about teaching somebody how to be a podiatrist. It was. It's about how to run a business within podiatry. And there's certain aspects of podiatry that make the book unique to podiatrists, but it's a business book. So good on you for realizing, hey, I'm just going to remarket and take the podiatry portion out, add a few, tweaks and value adds and things that are more specific to a generalized business book, and re-put it out there. I mean,
and the second book, It's No Secret There's Money in Small Business, it's so much better than the first one, because I had another,
much more.
It was written 4 years later.
Yeah.
I had more experiences. It is a far better book. And I always say it's the second best business book I've ever read. I just haven't found the best one yet. I love that. There's got to be one out there.
Right. There's got to be one better.
Everyone I know who's read the book just goes, freaking hell, this is a good book. I said,
it's a great book. It's a great book. It is. It really is.
It would have sold 10 million copies if Anthony Robbins' face was on the front.
Well, I mean, Photoshop is a thing.
I know. I did that at a conference. I had the book up there, and I said, there's only one little tweak I would have done to this cover to make sure I sold 10 million copies. And I put Anthony Robbins' face on it, and everyone just pissed himself laughing. I thought that was quite funny.
I love it. So right now, as you've gone through podiatry, you're proving to yourself that you know how to run a business.
Yeah.
And so now, you start a podcast that is focused on podiatry. Tell me what.
Well, the first one was It's No Secret with Dr. T, and that
what was your concept behind that podcast? Because I was on that
small business. Yeah, it was a small business and marketing podcast, but there was a really big pool to be in, and I'm an unknown person, so here I am. I'm competing against Anthony Robbins and Bouchard and Gary. But when it comes to marketing, you can't compete against these guys when you're unknown. Did 211 episodes. You helped me do my final episode, which is the most downloaded episode, actually.
Are you kidding me?
Final one. Yeah, people were glad to see me go. So
here I was being, hey, wow, I didn't know 7 people, gave a shit about hearing me as a guest on the podcast. So I figured, better than the 3 and 4 other downloads that you had on the other podcasts.
I think it's sitting on about 900 downloads or something.
That's fantastic. Well, I was like 799. Yeah. So I just kept on undownloading it and re-downloading it. I just trying to get the numbers up.
But the second podcast, Podiatry Legends podcast, what I've proven is just niching works. So my first book, It's No Secret There's Money in Podiatry, is not as good a book as It's No Secret There's Money in Small Business, but it sells about 8 times more than the second book.
Yeah.
My podcast, Podiatry Legends podcast, downloads on there are about 3 to 4 times more every episode than It's No Secret that Dr. T ever did. And what's funny, I've got so many people who are not podiatrists that listen to the Podiatry Legends podcast who say, didn't realize podiatry was so interesting.
You know,
we're not really talking about podiatry. We're not talking about podiatry.
Correct. You're talking about the business within podiatry and strategies within life. Yeah, just being.
Yeah,
I think it's fantastic, and you're so right about the niche part of things. People like the boutique. People like the niche. People like something that connects to them directly. And when they invest that time into it, it doesn't matter if it's like specifically about what they do for a living. They still feel they're part of something within a group of people that are connected to their industry, which I think that's brilliant that you realized that and focused on it.
Well, it was no different to when I had the Cairns clinic set up and when I set up Mackay. The biggest difference we did is when we set up the Mackay clinic, we said, we're not going to do all parts of podiatry. We're not going to be a general podiatry clinic. We're just going to focus on sports, on biomechanics and orthotics. That's all we're doing. Yep. We had no instruments, nothing. And that's why it went so well, because when it came to marketing, all we had to do was market one small part of podiatry. So I proved with the clinics, with the book, with the podcast, niching works, knowing who your ideal customer client works. But then even with the clinics growing, I eventually decided just to sell everything. And well, I got out of the franchising, sold all the clinics, went back to just having one clinic in Cairns because I got sick of traveling.
Sure.
I was at a conference and I got reminded when I was at the conference, why did I want to work for myself? And it's because I wanted to have time with my family.
Yep.
I wanted to be my own boss. And then I realized I was setting something up that was bigger than me. And I was away all the time. I'm going, well, this is going against everything that I wanted to do. So I thought I was making really good money from focusing on one clinic. So I thought, I'm just going to keep building that up. And I built it up that big that all of a sudden it popped up on the radar of this corporate company that was going around buying podiatry clinics. And they offered me an obscene amount of money and said,
and you didn't want to hurt their feelings.
And my business ran without me. So I had it set up. I wasn't even working in there anymore. I was just doing all the behind the scenes stuff.
Right.
So they bought my business. Like I said, paid me good money. And I went, and at the time I was already doing some speaking gigs. I was already doing some coaching. I sat down with my wife and I said, what do you think? She said, if you had nothing else to keep you occupied, the money that you're paying it, it's great. She said, but you would get bored and you will just end up spending it. She said, but because you've got a side hustle, you're doing something else, you're making money from that. She said, take the money. So we did.
Yeah. Good for you. So as you've kind of progressed through this, what's next for you? Like where's your focus right now? Are you focused on trying to turn one aspect of what you're doing into an income that you're monetizing off of, or are you okay with multiple things kind of working with you, whether it's the mentorship, the coaching side, whether it's doing something where you're monetizing off of a podcast, the book, speaking engagements? Where's your focus and what's next for you, and what do you want it to turn into? What's your hope? What's the goal that you're putting the extra 0 on the back of right now?
Oh, okay. So right now, focus on the podcast. So at the time of recording this, I'm up about episode 180 on the new podcast. So it's been going along pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
The best thing with the podcast gives me exposure to the podiatry profession. So I want to take what's going on in my head. I've got so much content that I've written, especially when I did the whole franchising and all the manuals. I've got so much stuff that goes on in my head constantly. I want to take what's in my head and I want to create a whole pile of online courses that podiatrists can just pick and choose whichever ones that they want to do.
Yep.
You probably find there could be physios, chiropractors that can go on there and do exactly the same thing, because just because it's got podiatry, a lot of it's going to relate to any profession. But
sure,
I just want to speak one language.
Yep.
I just find it easy that I'm speaking to podiatrists. So I want to write more books, get more podiatry related books. But long term, I'd love to do more speaking. Yeah, like more live, can't wait to do some live events again, but more speaking. But slightly outside of podiatry. I want people to understand that stop trying to learn from your own profession all the time.
Yes.
Yeah, accountants go to like say an accounting conference and they'll have all these different accounting and business people talk. Bring a podiatrist in.
Yes.
I'll tell you right now, it's just what you can learn from other people's professions and their stories. Like I did a speaking thing a few years back, and it was about persistence and resilience. So I got up and did like an hour talk on persistence and resilience. Probably one of the best talks I've ever done. And it was for a franchise company. And following me was our first Australian who won the gold medal at the Winter Olympics, Steve Bradbury.
Okay.
So he was straight after me. And when I finished, I had the crowd pumped up. He actually came up to me and just said, bloody hell, I've got to follow you. And I'm supposed to be the celebrity. And that's when.
That's awesome.
And him and I became friends after that. And the guy that spoke before me was a guy that's on TV here. And I have spoken on stage with one of the guys from the Shark Tank. And a guy who won the original The Bachelor on Australia. Yeah. So I've done some gigs that have been really, really cool. And when I come off, even the guy from the Shark Tank, they'll say, didn't realize just like what you have done or looked at something from that way. The guy from the Shark Tank did, because he's the guy who ended up selling my podiatry clinic to.
Ah, brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah, it was a guy from the Shark Tank teamed up with some other people and went around buying clinics. So so there was sort of method in my
So I think you make a fantastic point. If we keep on, going through life or business with blinders on, thinking that everything that we need to know is within the same channel and the same road that we've been driving miles and miles and miles on, you're not going to see the next opportunity. It's rip the blinders off, keep your head on a swivel, and communicate, network, talk to other people, look at what other people are doing. Even when it does come to the marketing side, if your product X, go look at how product A markets themselves and the types of video, the types of engagement that they have, because that's what you're trying to figure out, how to connect to people. You're not just trying to figure out how to connect your product to people. The first step is, how do you connect to people, period. And there's so many ideas and thoughts that are out there. And I'll tell you what, Tyson, ever since I've gotten to know you and I saw you on your Facebook, walk and podcast, reviewing podcasts, I've always had this connection that I'm like, this guy gets it. I've always felt that we speak a similar language with a personality that connects, and it's always been a blast to stay connected with you. And it's been great to have you on my podcast, and I'm excited to get you here in the States. I want to be up on, here's my goal. I'm going to put a 0 on the back of this. I want to be at a conference that I'm speaking at, that you're speaking at, on stage. I want to get Jesse Cole on that stage. I want to get Jason. I want to get an event that all of us are hanging out on that stage and doing a conference. And I want to do one in the US and I want to do one in Australia. Let's do like a piggyback thing, because I would have a blast being at a conference with you and playing off of each other. I think it would literally be a highlight for me.
Well, I'm going to put that in my diary. I am planning it. I am going to be in the States in 2022 when I'm allowed out of the country. I'm like a convict at the moment.
Right.
I'm not allowed to travel.
All locked up. Well, thanks so much for being part of the podcast, and thanks for the years of friendship. Even though we've never met face to face, we've truly become friends, and I've appreciated that entire journey of that, and appreciate what you're doing out there. And I think a lot of your advice, and I hope everybody that's listening to this does realize that it is about how you do something, not specifically what you're doing. And you bring a lot of that value to it. So pay attention to Tyson Franklin, everybody. Tyson, thanks for being my guest, and nothing but the best for you, bud.
No, Jeff, thanks for having me on. And like you said, we've known each other for a couple of years, and we can know each other for a lot longer. And we will meet up when I come to the States. So thanks 100%. For having me on.
You bet, buddy. This is Fueling the Tank. I am Jeff Peterson, and as you know, I end every single podcast the same way because I try to be hip and trendy, even though it just doesn't work most of the time. So I'll give it one more try. Peterson, out.